So you guys have probably heard a million things about feeding raw. Today we're going to kind of discuss what's true, what's false, what's all sorts of different questions. Pretty sure all the questions that I've ever heard, from raw feeding. I've helped a lot of people transition from a kibble diet to a raw-based diet. The results are spectacular. That's an understatement. By the end of the video, you'll have much more clarity, confidence, and control in feeding your dogs raw and how that'll look. Question number one, how do I know if my dog is actually absorbing nutrients from raw food? So there's a whole host of things. First of all, I want to just say, trust your intuition. If your dog is looking healthier, then he is most likely healthier. A big indicator, probably the biggest indicators, are poop, stool. We'll talk a little bit more about that later in the video, but just know that your dog's poop will look different on raw, and it is more healthy. Another indicator is their coat. Is their coat shinier? Is it softer? Is it more, is it growing quicker? Things like that is a good sign that your dog is absorbing the nutrients. Another indicator is energy levels. When their energy levels are spiking, kind of go all over the place, that's usually a sign of like dogs not properly processing the nutrients. If they have steady, easy energy throughout the day is something that is really a great indicator of your dog's health. You also, if you want to go crazy into it, you also could do blood testing. There's been a lot of studies out there that have done blood testing before and after feeding raw food that you guys can look up on your own time. You know, test your dog's blood when they're fully on kibble, and then test it when they're fully on raw, and take those blind blood tests and ask your vet which dog's healthier. They're gonna say the raw one, even if they don't believe in feeding raw. Question number two is it okay to switch protein sources often, or should I just stick to one? Let's take a little wander back in time here. When your proto dog was hanging out with humans back in the day, do you really think that they were eating the exact same meal every day? No, of course not. No, they would have caught a rat one day. They would have gotten thrown a bone by their human owner ancestors. Switching proteins as much as you possibly can is great. We recommend at a minimum of 5 days you should be switching. So 5 days, you should more than likely do multiple days you should be switching. Personally, I rotate my dogs every 3 days because that's an easy option for me. But if you are just feeding one protein, don't get upset. You're already way above what kibble gives your dogs. So don't be afraid to just feed them one protein. If that's what they're comfortable with, if they're allergic to everything else, just make sure you're feeding raw is, for me, the most important step. Even if it is just putting a raw egg on your dog's kibble, because it boosts their gut microbiome by more than 20% just with that one raw product. Question three, won't my dog be exposed to salmonella and other diseases? And truthfully, yeah, they will be exposed to some of those diseases. However, dogs have a different gut than you and I, meaning that they can process things that we couldn't process. We have very weak guts because we've been cooking on fires forever, but they have very strong guts that can take all sorts of things coming at them. However, it's extremely important that your raw dog food comes from a clean, natural source that can process and pack in the same day, putting it in the freezer, making sure all those bad bacteria is killed. Making sure that it's fresh is another important thing, because there is harmful pathogens that can hurt your dog. And unfortunately, a lot of it gets in raw food that is not properly processed. That's a little scary, you know. But fortunately, at Bonehead, we use a lot of steps to take away from those potential pathogens, including testing, lot testing, all sorts of different things that we can go on and on about. But I just want you to know, don't be too afraid of those things, because your dog can take it. They're a lot stronger than you think they are. So question four, how do I feed raw while traveling or boarding my dog? So this is a tough question, and I just want to tell you guys now, don't feel terrible about feeding kibble in extraneous situations, because at the end of the day, it is like a shelf-stable product. You can leave it wherever you want to. It's good for 25 years. It's fine. But just know that's not the point. A good option is there's a lot of great freeze-dried food brands, air-dried food brands that have them closer to natural product. And look at their ingredients. Can you recognize the names? Can you see that, like, would your great-grandmother recognize those names? Those are important steps to look at. You know, we might talk harsh about kibble because it is, you know, hurting your dog. But just like you can eat McDonald's every once in a while. Question five, what if my dog won't eat raw at first? Should I force it or transition slowly? So a few things. Dogs, just like you, like put yourself in their shoes. Sometimes they don't like the textures. Sometimes they're not used to it, especially older dogs. They're not used to that being food. Like when you would drop raw meat on the ground while you're making burgers and your dog runs over and eats it all real quick, you're most likely to yell at them. So there might be some pullback from that. Another thing is that temperature is also a big thing. So if you're just taking it out of the freezer, getting in a bowl as quickly as possible, you know, it might be a little too cold on your dog's teeth. Whereas the other way, if you decide to lightly cook your food, it might be too hot for your dog. So make sure it's closer to as close as you can get to room temperature, and that should help your dog with eating. Another thing is that you can get them excited about dinner. Go on a walk beforehand, or, you know, get them pumped up, like start running around the house with them, playing with them, and then feed them smaller portions, like at a time, like as treats, as a promotion. Put treats on top of it. Like say they have a favorite treat, put it on top of the raw food. Your dog will get the hint eventually. I know when I got my Queensland puppy, she was kind of used to the kibble life, and she struggled to transition into fully eating, but eventually she took it, like she eats it quicker than any other of my dogs now. So just know that you're not doing a bad thing by transitioning the raw. You're doing the best thing for them. But just like a kid who's eating McDonald's all the time, it's hard to get them to eat celery and, you know, like things that are actually whole grains, you know, beef, all that sort of thing. So just know that, be patient with them. But more likely than not, they're going to go crazy for it. Number 6, do raw fed dogs need supplements, or is food alone enough? So I personally, this is kind of up for debate in a lot of spaces, but for me, I look back at what were dogs eating before kibble. And to me, they weren't eating something processed into some vitamin. They were eating something whole. And so for me, I believe in feeding my dogs whole ingredients only. Things are more bioavailable. There's all sorts of studies that you can look up showing that like a whole ingredient is better than a powdered manufactured ingredient. There's all sorts of quality issues that you can have. You know, if you break down milk into a million things and then put it back together, it's really not milk anymore. It's like a Frankenstein milk, you know? So I would suggest that you just go with whole ingredients. However, if your dog has some sort of allergen or something that's specific to their needs, make sure you follow through with those needs. And sometimes, you know, that compound or whatever you guys are looking for is only available in like puffer fish meat or something crazy. You know, of course you're not gonna go out and get puffer fish meat. So just go and get like some kelp powder, you know, like it's okay. But just know that you guys are already here listening to this video. You're already doing a great step towards your dog's health. Number 7, why does my dog's poop look different on raw? With poop, just generally on raw food, when you transition your dogs over, they're gonna poop less frequently. It's gonna be smaller and darker. And it's gonna look closer to, if you've ever seen coyote poop, like natural coyote poop, that's what it's gonna look more closer to. The few things that I would look for is color. So if your dog's stool is, you know, a lighter brown color or something like that, especially if they're on kibble, that is most likely due to the dyes that they put in kibble to give it that brown color that we all like. So when you transition your dog, it's gonna look different. And that sometimes scares people. I just wanna let you know, it's okay. Your dog might have a loose stool for a minute, but in a few days it should firm right up and just looks like small, natural canine poop. Something also to look forward to is just less trips out into the yard to pick up the poop. So huge plus in my opinion. I love that. But biggest plus is that your dog's healthier. Number 8, can raw feeding actually save me money in the long run? Long story short, yes. Just like how if you were to eat a super meal every day, like of quality food, you would live longer. Like that's just the bottom line. If you eat better whole ingredients, you will live longer. Same thing for your dogs. Feed your dogs a whole ingredient diet. It will help them out, and feed them quality ingredients, not just the whole ingredient. Things you can expect to save money on are on vet bills. I mean, gosh, vet bills are just getting insane. They require so much. Vets are only getting better at what they do, and that usually comes with a more expensive price tag. So help your dog help your wallet by doing this. Another thing that you can expect to see is there's less allergies on raw. So this hasn't really necessarily been proven out. This is kind of just my own personal opinion. But the closer you feed anyone or anything closer to a biologically appropriate food, they're going to experience less pain and less need for allergy medications, just overall a healthier dog. So there is a little bit of data out there suggesting that you could save anywhere from, including the raw food price, anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 over your dog's lifetime by feeding them raw, if you miss out on those specific vet visits. So, but don't just put it on me. So like, do you guys' own research and also think about a little bit in your own dog's health, because I'm not the only one saying this. So I got a husky he fell in my lap a little bit, and I love him. His name's Ollie. I've talked to him a little bit on the channel before. And he was a little bit overweight, which is a big killer in dogs. And he had some allergies. He licked his paws constantly. He had some different issues with his bowels, like things like that, you know, but he turned a corner when we started feeding him this specific Bonehead Raw diet ancestral mix. It's really like he lost a lot of weight, like good weight. He's a lot more energized. Like he'll keep up with my like 9-month-old Queensland now. Like it's crazy to see like the dog he was and who he is now. So I'm expecting him to live longer, and you know, call me in another 10 years and we'll see where he's at, because I imagine he'll still be alive, to be honest with you. Compare that to taking him to vets to do all these things. I would imagine he'd be on a lot of diets, a lot of expensive, just as expensive food that's kibble based, that's not even really that good for him. Multiple trips to the vet to do, you know, vets are just getting more expensive. And I think we all know that, is that it's just like things are more expensive nowadays. And it's better to avoid those visits and to avoid things unless they're absolutely necessary. Number 9, what do I do if I can't afford raw every day? So there's many things that you can get into raw. I mentioned earlier, like you can put an egg in your dog's meal and it improves their gut microbiome by about 20%. We have additions, and they're just small little diced cubes of kidneys, other raw ingredients that you can get for your dogs that's raw quality. You know, you could feed kibble in the morning and when you're running out the door, and then feed raw at night when you have a little bit more time. There's a whole host of things that you can just get raw in their diet. I'm not just saying that as like somebody who's selling raw food, which of course I am, but it's so important to just get a little bit of raw in there for your dog, because it will help them in the long run. Number 10, why do some vets discourage raw if it works so well? I get a little conspiracy theory here for you. Not really, because you can just look at it honestly and just show it. Like I have a friend right now, he's going through vet school, and apparently they only, like out of their 8-year degree, they only have to take 1 to 2 classes on animal nutrition. That's ridiculous. That's where it starts. We're talking about preventative medicine rather than reactive. We can all agree that if our dog, you know, God forbid, broke a leg or did something like that, we would take him to the vet and they would do such an incredible job at reacting to that. But the preventative part, I think, is really key in what's missing in this situation. A lot of vets have financial incentives to sell this kibble. Multiple vets have, you know, Hills has a veterinary program, Purina has a veterinary program, and all it is the goal to sell food. And, you know, they might believe in the product, but you know, when you start just looking at it objectively, I think it's really hard to argue that, like, this isn't what our dogs are used to eating. This is not what I mean, for the past few years they have, but in the grand scheme of things, this is not what they were bred to eat. Like the average age of a golden retriever in the 50s was 14 to 15. Now it's down to 13 to 12. That might not sound a lot to us humans that live until we're 80, but that's a 20% decrease in their lifespan. That's huge. The last question, why shouldn't I just buy food from the store and feed it to my dog raw? There's a lot less stringent protocols that human food follows as compared to us, like a raw brand, that we go above and beyond of those protocols. And it's mainly just because it's intended to be cooked. You know, you can get away with it a lot, but just like anything that's not intended to be raw, it's not intended to be processed. Versus as us, we buy the animals specifically to be used in this process. So we're looking at the animal health as they're alive, how they go through the processing room, if they're condemned for certain reasons or not. We see the whole process. For whereas, like, you know, getting just food from the store, it's not cheaper. And first of all, it's not done for you. You have to put in a lot of time and effort that way. Which there's a lot of costs there. However, things that are meant to be consumed raw, like fruit, veggies, you know, certain grain, things like that, those are all great to feed raw. In fact, that's where we get all of our food. We go down to Costco right now and get our fruits and veggies for the mix. So, which is kind of funny to think about, but every once in a while I go to Costco and pick up a bunch of carrots, sweet potatoes, all sorts of fun things for the dogs. Just be careful, especially of the meat that you're feeding. Also, you can't really find, you can find bones for sure, but you can't really find a bone meal mix that is actually going into the dog food like we have in ours. If raw feeding even slightly interests you, I would suggest that you check out our website, boneheadraw.com. It's in the link in description. But if you're here just to learn, that's great too. And feel free to hit me in the comments. If you disagree, if you're a vet and you disagree, I'm calling you out right now. Argue with me in the comments. Like, let's go. Like, I believe in this wholeheartedly. And I think this is the best way to feed your dogs. And if you guys have any other questions that you'd like me to go over in the next video, I would love to answer those. Anyway, hit subscribe and follow along for no fluffed, honest answers from a raw dog food guy. So anyway, I appreciate it.